Hey all you creepy critters, this is your pal, Uncle Guts, coming to you with a brand new show that I like to call Story Time with Uncle Guts. Today's story is The Ghosts of Mr. Parthens, which was written by yours truly. That means me. Alright, let's get started. Once upon a time, in a small town near the edge of a large city, there lived a young boy named Jimmy. Jimmy was a boy with a big imagination, so big in fact, he tended to forget his own surroundings. Neighbors would watch young Jimmy playing in the streets and mumble under their breath, "Why, that boy needs to grow up. He'll be in trouble before you know it. Where are his parents?" There was one neighbor who never said a word about the boy, even though he saw him play in the streets just as well as the others. Mr. Parthens would sit on the porch outside his house and just frown. The other neighbors used to say hello to him, but now no one does. They all call him a grump. Some say that his house is haunted, or at least, that is what Jimmy believed. While Jimmy played in the streets, he pretended he was a great ghost hunter. In his mind, he was a strong man with all kinds of ghost hunting gear. He had a ghost net for catching them in the air. He had a ghost cage for those ghosts he would tame. Mr. Parthens would watch the boy play and smile. Something about the boy reminded him of his past. One day, on an unusually sunny Friday, Jimmy decided to walk up to Mr. Parthens and say hello. So, he did just that. "Hello there, Mr. Parthens." The old man laughed. "Huh, no, it's Parthens, not Parthens. What, do I look like a fish?" Jimmy shook his head. "No, Mr. Parthens. I don't hear your name too much, so I wasn't sure." Mr. Parthens nodded. "No need to worry, boy. What do they call you then?" Jimmy's eyes widened. "You mean you don't know my name? Seems everyone around here knows my name. It's Jimmy." The old man laughed. "Yes, of course. I do remember now. Sometimes I have a hard time remembering all the details." Jimmy smiled. "I know what you mean. Sometimes I have a hard time remembering how to do my homework." Mr. Parthens shook his head and grinned. "Sure, same thing." "Mr. Parthens, is your house haunted?" Jimmy asked. "Well, I guess you could say that every house is haunted." "Well, by what?" Mr. Parthens laughed. "By us." Jimmy frowned. "You mean we are ghosts?" No, we're not ghosts, kid. I was just making a joke. But hey, do you think the house could tell a difference?" "The difference?" "Yeah, between us the living and them the ghosts." Jimmy smiled. "Well, I guess I don't know." "Well, everyone has ghosts." "Well, what do you mean?" Mr. Parthens smiled sadly. "Well, I lost my wife years ago. I suppose she is my ghost." Jimmy looked around excitedly. "You mean, is she here, haunting your house?" "No. Well, maybe. I don't see her as you would think. I see her in a cup of coffee. I see her on the couch where she used to sit. I smell her in the roses. I feel her hand in mine. That sort of thing." Jimmy frowned. "Oh. I didn't mean to upset you, kid." Jimmy sighed. "No, it's alright. I was just hoping to hunt a real ghost." The old man laughed. "Ha! I'm sure Linda would get a kick out of that." "Well, who is Linda?" "Oh, my wife." Jimmy looked around confused. "Why would your wife go around kicking things?" "Oh, no, kid, that's just a saying. Get a kick out of it means she would find it funny." Jimmy smiles. "Oh, good. So she's a good ghost." Mr. Parthens nodded. "Yes, you could say that. Only trouble is, she doesn't see me. None of the ghosts do." Jimmy almost screamed out, "There are other ghosts?" Well, yes, there are other ghosts. There are many. Think of all the people who ever lived before us. Great kings of mighty empires, every man, woman, and child, all those people who lived before. That's an awful lot, isn't it? Jimmy nodded. Yes, sir, it sure would be. So, if ghosts do exist, what would that mean? Jimmy laughs. Wow! Lots of ghosts! That's right. Some people, however, they don't believe in ghosts. Jimmy smiled. Do you believe in ghosts, Mr. Parthens? Mr. Parthens frowned. I don't know what I believe in, but I'm sure they're there. I do know that much. I know they're there. Well, isn't that the same thing as believing? Mr. Parthens shook his head. No. If I don't believe they're real, then they can't affect me. How did your wife die, Mr. Parthens? The old man sighed. I made a lot of mistakes a long time ago. There was a car wreck, and Mrs. Parthens, she didn't make it. Well, I'm sorry, Mr. Parthens. He shook his head and wiped a tear from his eye. It's all right. Well, Mr. Parthens, it's time for me to go now. Mama's gonna wonder where I am. Mr. Parthens frowned. Are you sure you can't stay just a little longer? Jimmy smiled. You know I can't. You know the rules. Mr. Parthens nodded. Of course. How could I forget? Jimmy laughed. Silly Mr. Parthens. Well, same time tomorrow? Yes, of course. Mr. Parthens watched as young Jimmy ran out into the streets. Jimmy didn't see the car speeding around the corner. Mr. Parthens watched as the boy turned just in time to see the face of the driver in the car. The driver tried to swerve, but it was too late. The car skidded into the boy and smashed into another car on the street. The driver stumbled out of the car. There was a woman in the car who was hurt, but the driver did not notice her passing. The driver instead ran to the boy and held him in his arms. Then he screamed. Mr. Parthens tried to close his eyes, but he could not. He tried to stand, but he could not. All he could do is watch. He had been drunk. Every day he drank until he couldn't drink anymore. He left the boy at home alone every day while he and his wife went out and forgot the world. The boy figured out how to unlock the doors and went outside to play. Mr. Parthens cried and mumbled. Yes, Jimmy, my boy. My Jimmy Parthens. My ghosts are real.